Yay. Hi.
Hi, Amy. So great to see you.
It's so good to see you. First, where in the world are you?
I'm in Manali in India at the moment.
I
And
knew
it's
it had to be somewhere, not home.
yeah, and it's 12:30 in the morning. So I'm like
Oh my God. Thank you for doing this. I
yeah,
did
no,
check into that. Thank you. Well,
no problem.
I mean, I was just trying to introduce you, and you have recently been named one of by Men's Journal, one of the 25 most adventurous women in the world. And I would actually say, I think you're the most adventurous person I know. And I'm in absolute awe. And I just want everybody to, who is tuning in or gets to see this, to go immediately and look at Jody MacDonald's Instagram and her website. And what I love about, I just want to do a quick introduction just to say that what I love about your work and who you are is like you epitomize somebody with their arms embracing this life in the most beautiful way. And your pictures show that there's like this intimacy and closeness, like you're on top of the train with the people that, I mean, people, I don't even know how to describe some of these images and I won't try to, but just you feel it when you look at your work that you're just right there. But
Wow, that's such an incredible compliment coming from you. Thank you so much. It's very, very humbling. I appreciate it.
no, but like, can you talk about what you're doing right now? I mean, on your Instagram, it looks like you're on the go.
Yeah, so right now, in I would say the beginning of last summer, I started a motorcycle journey. It was originally for along the Tibetan plateau, and it was a culmination of a bunch of things that was kind of going on in my life. My father passed away last summer, and I had a really big health scare in 2019. They found like a tumor in my abdomen, and I was told I had 1 to 4 years to live. And then they removed it, and they're like, "Oh, it's benign. You're fine. You're good to go." And I just I've always been one to, I have this incredible pressure to not squander my life. And I think these things really kind of amplified that for me. And I was like, you know what? I wanted to do this motorcycle trip, solo motorcycle trip along the Tibetan plateau for as long as I can remember. And I talk, it's funny because I talk to a lot of my friends and they're like, yeah, you've been talking about that for like decades. And I was like, okay, well, I really need to do this. Um, so I was just like, yeah, I'm just gonna start it. And then Canada and India had this big visa issue because of COVID. So I could only go for like 3 months at a time. So then I had to exit and get my visa. So now I'm back and I'm continuing that journey. But this time because of weather reasons, I'm going to cruise around Rajasthan for a while. And then I never really have an exact plan, but because so many things kind of dictate where I go, but I'm always on the hunt for, while I'm doing it, I want to find really amazing photo stories that inspire hope and about the planet and the people on the planet. And there's just so much amazing stuff. And I'm just trying to dive in head first and kind of, do these, find these incredible photo stories, but at the same time, really do something that's really fulfilling for myself in so many different ways, you know?
I I love that. And actually, somebody yesterday, I made the post about our talk, and somebody said, "Can you?" I'm going to put in our chat right now your image of Rajan the elephant in the
Mhm.
is it Andaman Islands,
Yeah.
and I think this ties into what you're just talking about. It seems like you just go into the world and you literally find these off the beaten track stories. You don't read about them. I mean, I'm just curious, and maybe we can start with what you do now and then get to the photo itself. But people are really interested in how do you find these stories? How do you plan for them? And and with that image itself, like what was your thinking and preparation around making that incredible story?
Yeah, I mean, I think, my life is always so entwined with adventure and in the middle of doing these kind of grand adventurous things. And how it started with the Rajan story, I was living at sea for 10 years, as you do, I guess. And then, as a photographer, and you're so curious about the world and everything. And so I feel like a little bit of a kid in some ways, where I'm just doing something and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, that's so amazing. And I kind of want to go do that. And I feel like I have a little bit of like ADHD in terms of like photo projects, because it's like I'm in, something just so I'm personally witnessing and experiencing something that I think is just so cool. So then I kind of dive down that hole a little bit and try to kind of, find out more about it and document it and see what kind of story it is. And that's exactly what happened with the Rajan story. I was living on the sailboat this was in 2010, and I had seen this Hollywood movie on the boat called The Fall. And in it, they had this Asian elephant swimming in this tropical blue water. And I have no idea why the scene like struck me so much when I watched it. But I was like, this has to be like a Hollywood set or something. Like, this can't be real. Like, where in the world would there be an Asian elephant swimming and like totally submersed in this, tropical blue water? And I was like, well, I'm just going to go on the internet and find out. And I got really lucky, and I found out that the elephant in that movie was living in the Andaman Islands. And it just so happened that we were going to be sailing into the Andamans like a couple months later. And I was like, I don't know what, I'm getting off the boat. I'm going to go find this elephant. And I just want, I don't know why, but like, I want to see what, like, experience this or see what it's all about or get more information about it. Cause I don't like, it just struck me in my core somehow. I can't describe it other than that. And when we got to the Andamans, I hopped off the boat and I started just asking around about, where would I find this elephant? Cause I think you, as you know, Amy, when there's like an anomaly of something in an area, everybody will know about it. It's just like, oh yeah, that's over there, and so that's exactly what happened. I ended up finding him, and I had no real intention other than just like seeing, where he swims and what was going on. And then the more I learned about his backstory, I was like, oh, this is such a cool story, that he was a group of 10 elephants that was brought to the Andaman Islands in the 70s to log these incredible trees that are on the Andaman Islands. And because at the time when they were logging the islands, they would cut these huge trees down, but they had no way to get the cut trees to these barges that were sitting anchored off the coast of the island. So this group of 10 elephants was brutally forced to, learn to love to swim in ocean water, because elephants love fresh water, but they don't necessarily like salty like ocean water. This is one of the reasons we don't often see them in there. And so they were kind of forced to swim in these deeper waters because they needed them to bring these logs to these barges that were anchored off the coast. And so that's what they did. And when an island was finished being logged, then they had no way to transport the elephants to the next island, which was sometimes miles away. So then the elephants would swim, these 10 elephants would swim in a line together to the next island and then help log that island. And I just thought, oh, this is just such an incredible story. And that, and the more I kind of, found out more information and did more research on it, Rajan was the last of this group to have survived, to have survived. So the other, when logging became banned in 2000s, these elephants were essentially out of a job. And some of them got dispersed to temples on the mainland. And as far as everybody knew, that all the other elephants had kind of passed away in various different ways, and that Rajan was the the last of this group living with his mahout, which is an Indian word for elephant caretaker, on this island. And I don't know how to describe it other than I just instinctually fell in love with the relationship between the Rajan and his mahout Najru. They had been together for 30 years, and it literally was just this magical, incredible bond between the two of them. And as you know, with elephants, they're so incredibly smart that to see that kind of relationship is really profound in so many ways. And so I spent 2 weeks following them around and getting to witness this basically love affair between the two of them, and just this amazing story. And then I had by chance talked to a BBC producer who was visiting the Andamans, and we just started chatting one night at dinner, and she was like, "Oh, I would love to run this story in the BBC," and I was like, "Oh, can you hear me?"
Yes.
I didn't know if we paused there for a second. And so she said, "I would love to run this in the BBC," and I was like, "Oh, that's great." And then so from there, it kind of went viral, and it's been, the Rajan images have been everywhere since.
Well, and I love that because I actually, I think those are timeless images. Yeah, and it's interesting. I've never heard you tell that story. It is so moving hearing it come from you, and those images are so moving. This one I'm going to put in here just a shout out. It's available for you can buy this as a print, and it is so. I mean, that is the most iconic image, and it really speaks to this. I mean, all of your images have this empathy, and they're just anyway. Please go check out that story. Is it will live on forever for sure. And I love your journey there. But I guess so did you think you were going to go underwater with, like, how did you were you doing a lot of underwater photography at that point?
Yeah, I was, because I was living on the sailboat. So I was doing a lot of, like, the adventure and underwater wildlife stuff. So yeah, I had the housing, I had the gear, and I had been shooting it a lot. So when to shoot Rajan in the water I was kind of set up for it, just because I had all the gear and had been practicing for years doing it. So yeah.
How did you get, I mean, how did you even get, I think a lot of people dream of doing what you do. And how do you get started? I know you get this question a lot, but
yeah,
I know.
Well, I think it really started. I grew up in Saudi Arabia I'm Canadian, but my dad got a contract in Saudi to help set up the telephone system. So I moved there at the age of 3, my early teenage years. And I always tell people that one of the many perks that you get for kind of being a foreigner in the Middle East at that time was a lot of, they just give you a ton of perks, and one of them was paid vacations. And my parents had never traveled anywhere. So they were like, "Oh my God, every spring break and holiday, we're going to travel somewhere we'd never been." So that's what we did for my whole childhood. And so I was really, really fortunate to see a lot of the world when I was very young. And I think it really instilled in me this love of kind of like exotic places and travel and exploration. And then when I moved back to Canada, in university, I did a bachelor in outdoor recreation, which everyone makes fun of me for, because it's like, oh, it's not a real degree. But I didn't know what else, I was interested in, that I wanted to take. And in school, my favorite classes were always art and phys ed. And then in college, in university, I took a photography elective, my first photography elective. And for me, that was it. I was like, this is my medium. I can combine my love of outdoor adventure and art by, by taking my camera with me and all these incredible, profound experiences that I was having in the outdoors. And I think it was at a really, kind of critical time in your life where you're trying to figure out what your passions are and what your career is going to be. And, you have all that pressure. And I was always really, really interested in listening to what my heart said and what I was, what really got me going and what I got excited about. And so I just kept following that feeling. And it kind of led me to, and then after university, I became an outdoor guide. I was a raft guide in Alaska, and I did a lot of guiding in Canada and the West Coast in the mountains. And I started always taking my camera with me on all these adventures. And I think it was just like this slow progression of that, with not actually having the intent of like, oh yes, I'm going to be, a professional photographer in any way. But it just kind of evolved like that, just listening to your heart and what really got me inspired and what really got me fired up in life. And then when I started sailing around the world, I was like, yes, this is it. Like, if I want to take photography seriously, like, this is the time. I'm in these amazing places, witnessing these incredible, all the amazing ocean life and the cultures we're visiting and, just the places. I mean, it's just kind of overwhelming how much you're being exposed to. And I just thought, yeah, I mean, who else? Like, I'm so fortunate to have this situation that I should take advantage of it. And so it was just this evolution of basically following my gut.
That's so interesting. And I think a lot about what stops people from following their heart in the way that you do. And maybe some of that is fear. And I wondered if you could talk about, like, how do you deal with, do you have, I'm assuming every human being has moments of fear.
Oh,
How do
yeah.
you process that? Like, how do you move through that emotion? Because to me, that's the biggest block from preventing us from following our passions, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Like, I think in terms of outdoor stuff and experiences, my fear, I think I've learned over the years of putting myself in fearful situations so much that I've learned that it's now something that I kind of gravitate to. It's something that like, for me, it's an indicator that I should be doing it. And again, it's listening to your gut. And for me to like say, oh, to stop and think, okay, I'm a little bit fearful here. I need to keep pushing through it. Like, this is the moment I need to stop and recognize it and keep moving forward. Because I know I've learned that over the years, like, that's where the most rewarding and the most exciting and the most fulfilling stuff comes from. And I hate I hate regret, and that's another thing. I have a fear of regret. So it doesn't make sense, because I should then be going towards regret, but I don't.
No, I totally hear you. I think sometimes we make up the most ridiculous things in our head. And when you move towards it, you unpack it and realize, like,
Yeah.
half the time, none of that, the things we're afraid of aren't even there, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, completely. And I think and nothing's really, I've learned, is ever bad as what create in your own head. So, but I just find I get so much more personal reward by pushing through something I didn't know I could do, or I didn't think was possible for myself, or, I get so much fulfillment out of that. And, yeah, and then I think that's what I try to share with other people, is just like, the world is so incredible in so many different ways, and if we can just kind of push ourselves out into it, and then, like, being a photographer, it's amazing because it's just trying to document that, it's just yeah, I find it so fulfilling and rewarding.
Oh, I mean, I'm like, I wish I knew you when I was much younger too, that we were friends back then, because there, you know, you are a huge role model. And I mean, even today, I think there's things that like stop me. And it's so important to just think about you out there in the world. And it's like, whoa, yeah, we can do these things. But I also, what else did I want? I wanted to ask you, how I feel like in the beginning, your work has had an evolution, and I would love for you to talk about how you think your work and how you see the world has evolved, and but from when you started till today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easier for somebody sitting on the outside to kind of perceive that evolution than it is to look internally at yourself. I mean, I think photography in general has changed so much over the years with social media and now so many places and cultures and everything have been photographed, and the stories seem to be like we're inundated with so many different stories and content and everything. And I think it can be overwhelming just as a storyteller or photographer to kind of like, how do we stand out in all of this? And I don't really know the best answer, except for it keeps coming back to I feel like I don't need to overthink any of those things. I felt if I'm out in the world doing these things that are really fueling me personally, then that's again what I should be following, and those are the stories I should be pursuing, even if they have been done before. Maybe do them in a way that nobody's done them, or just in a way that's unique to myself, because I think every time everybody does a story, it's kind of it's in their unique own way, right? And I just feel like if it's something that's really special and important to me, then that's what's paramount. That's what I should be pursuing. And I think that's never led me astray. And I think that's the best advice that I could give to anyone who's you know going out trying to find these stories and stuff. But I also don't think that you're going to sit there and find them on the computer. Like, I feel like you really got to be out in the world, and you got to be doing things, and you got to be meeting people, and you really have to be experiencing it firsthand, because everything you as everybody knows, you can't always trust what you're reading on the internet. And so you need to be just out there doing things, and looking for the stuff that really really moves you. And I think in terms of my own personal evolution, it's something that I constantly struggle with. It's just like, what how do I find more meaningful stories? And I think that's why one of the many reasons why I admire you so much is in your work, is just because you're working on these such profound stories that have so much value and give so much back. And yeah, so it's kind of like how do you become more like Amy, basically?
Oh, thank you. That is so kind. But no, I mean, I think about you when I have rough days, and I'm just like, she's out there, she's not stopping. You are a force. And what I love is just, again, how much you remind us of how much beauty there is, and literally you to me are like this metaphor of like someone who goes towards fear, and that to me is such a beautiful metaphor for this world. Like, we all need to not be so afraid of one another, and walk towards each other.
Yes, very, 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 very much. And that's what I kind of urge everyone, just to maybe not have these crazy adventures, but just go travel, because I think that's the thing that you learn the most, is that we are all the same. We all are having the exact same struggles, personal issues and struggles around the world. And if we just had that empathy towards one another, I mean, what a different world we would be living in, not only for the humans, but for animals and wildlife and nature,
Yeah.
everything. It's such a fundamental, profound thing, empathy, and you don't really realize it till you go out into the world again. It just that's why it's so valuable,
Yeah. And I would also just throw this out there because, we're not all able to travel in
Hmm.
the same way, but I find stories everywhere. Like literally,
Yes.
I listen to Pico Iyer. He's an amazing
Yes.
travel writer, and he just came out. I just heard a talk yesterday. I think he did a TED talk, um, for everybody to go check that out. But it's also about staying still. And if you want to find the best story, just take the same path every day or something to that effect. I'm butchering what he said. But I mean, because I think you can and should go out in the world, but also to remind people you don't have to go far. There's like wonder and stories that will surprise you right next to us sometimes. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's towards people we don't know in our communities and just
Yeah,
chatting.
or even just outside. I always tell people it's just outside that, maybe your area of your routine, whatever that area is, that little space. And during COVID, I couldn't, obviously we couldn't travel. And there was these Peruvian sheep herders that have been moving through my valley in Sun Valley for hundreds of years. And I was always, every time I saw them with the sheep, I was like, where are these sheep herders going? And what's the story? Like, where are the sheep coming from? And where did they take them in the valley? And I would talk to all these people and nobody would know. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, nobody knows. So during COVID, I was like, I'm going to go hang out with the sheep herders. And I did. I camped with them in their little sheep trailers. I had my tent just next to theirs, and I helped them sheep herd, and I helped them move the sheep through the valley. And I got to tell you, Amy, it was like one of the best experiences I've ever had. I mean, I loved it so much. And I learned so much about where I lived in a way that nobody else knew about. And like, I didn't even have to leave. It was fantastic. So they really are everywhere. And again, I think that comes back to, I mean, we hear it all the time, follow your curiosity. But, here's this thing that I would, drive by and would see thousands of sheep they're moving the sheep. And I was just like, this is so interesting. This is so interesting. Where are they coming from? Where are they going? And then, just starting to hang out with them. I have the first time I approached the sheep herder guy at his camp trying to ask him questions was literally 1 minute from my house. And
My
I went to talk to him, and and he couldn't speak English very well. And I said, well, where are you moving the sheep to? Like, where are today or tomorrow, where are you moving them to? Because I wanted to ask him if I could join and take some photographs and follow with them. And he, brokenly were communicating, and he was like, yes. And then he was like, we're going to take them down the valley, and we're going to take a right at Arnold Schwarzenegger's house. That was his line. I thought it was so funny. I was like, oh my God, what a quote,
good quote. Your
Only in
story.
Sun Valley.
That is so funny. Only in Sun Valley,
Yeah.
exactly.
And we literally did. So we took the sheep, we moved them through the valley the whole next day. And literally we got on top of this mountain and we looked down and you could see Arnold's house. And we literally took a right out of the valley at his house. It was so funny.
Good tip. So anybody that wants to follow the sheep hang a right.
Hang a right. That's where they start. They hang a right at Arnold's house.
That's so good. Well, I know it's late there, and it is always so wonderful talking to you. And thank you for being you and everything that you do. And yeah, and I guess that like one other thought I had about you is just for people listening is like Jody embraces discomfort too, right? Would you say that's
Yeah. I mean, if I just feel it's like where the best life lessons are, where the best fulfillment is for me. And I know it's kind of sick and twisted, but
no, I love it. Well, I adore you. Thank you so much, too, for making time. And also, before we hang up, I'm going to put in the chat, please go look and purchase her print if you want that amazing story of Rajan. And again, the profits go back. They're split between Jody to help fund her beautiful work and these environmental storytelling grants, because we want more Jodys in the world doing what you do.
Well, Amy, I can't thank you enough for everything that you do, what you've done for Vital Impacts. I mean, just it's so inspiring. I mean, wow. Keep fighting the good fight. That's what we're trying to do, right?
Totally. Yes. And I hope our paths cross soon, but lots of love and thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to chat with you.
You too. Take care.
Okay, bye.
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 Bye.